Welcome to Hawthorne.
Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. If it's the end of the month, then it's time for new horror and, of course, what I watched in a whiskey. Thankfully, we do not have 30-plus movies to talk about this time around. However, I'm going to supplement this month a little bit, and we're going to talk about a couple of television shows. I don't watch a ton of horror movies this month. It's just been kind of a hectic month, and didn't get a chance to watch as many as I would have liked. But before we talk movies, we should talk whiskey. So, what I'm going to open this month, is a Maker's Mark barrel pick. This is a private select that was done. It's called the Irishman's Pick. I'm not quite sure why. I guarantee this is a fresh crack. I'm OCD and I like getting all of the wax off of there. And I didn't think you would want to watch me fumbling with a knife to get the wax off of here, because that's not great. Internet videoing. Nice good pop on that one. So this is Maker's Mark. This is their basically their Maker's 46s, where they put these staves inside the barrels, and the staves can be a variety of different things. In this case, it had, let me see here, 3 baked American pure staves, 1 seared French cuvee stave, 5 roasted French mendiant staves, and 1 toasted peach spice stave. Staff? Whatever. So they do different combinations in different barrels, and it gives you sort of a different flavor. So we're going to pour some of this Maker's Mark into my Maker's Mark glass. We'll see what we think. It's got a rich nose, but it's fairly subtle. I would say, I mean, it's a bourbon, so obviously it's going to be fairly sweet, but it's definitely on the sweeter side of bourbons. Oh, that's really good. Wow. The oak is really coming through. It's very woody, but if you ever had like over-oaked bourbon, which I have a few times, that is not something you want. It has a tendency to just kind of taste like a board. This is bringing those nice, rich, sort of oaky flavors, but it's not just sort of tasting like you walked into a lumberyard. I'm not sure if it's because I read the label and I'm sort of putting that on there, but I definitely get some fruit in there. I guess maybe a peach. This is something but peach on one of the staves is a... where was it? Maybe I just made that up. No. Apparently I just made that up. Well, in any case. Very rich, kind of fruity, sweet, kind of maybe a tiny bit of spice. Now, Maker's Mark is a wheated bourbon, so you're not typically going to get much spice on there because there's not any rye in there. But there's maybe just a hint of spice on it. In any case, very, very good. Very good pick. I might even go back and see if they have another couple of these left. And this is at Central City Liquor, which is here in Des Moines. So if you're not in Des Moines, sorry. But given the combination on here, you could find one that was similar to this, and it should taste similar. Maker's Mark does rotate their barrels, so all the barrels are supposed to be the same, or supposed to taste the same because they get aged the same in the same manner, which is one of the only distilleries that does that. Anyway, we're here to talk about horror, so I'm going to start off with what I think was maybe the horror movie that I was just... It's so nothing, it kind of makes you angry, and that's Prey for the Devil. P-R-E-Y, of course, because it's... I don't know. I don't even have anything to say about this movie. It's sort of like priests in training to do exorcisms. It has no heart. It really has no emotion. There's nothing scary. There's not even really that many jump scares. This movie's kind of nothing. I hate to just bag on a movie totally, but this movie it brought nothing. I don't know. I don't know what they were trying to do with it. Admittedly, I am not really up for the exorcism type movies. I mean, The Exorcist is a pretty good one, but even that, probably, you know, the best of the exorcism movies, I'm not super into, and this is definitely not the best of the exorcism movies. I mean, as far as the plot synopsis, there is a nun who is trying to study to be a priest, or to conduct exorcisms, but the patriarchy doesn't want a lady to be exorcisming people, because it's the Catholic Church, and why are you surprised there's patriarchy in the Catholic Church? I don't know. The whole movie is just kind of, it's very, very bland. It feels like a manufactured horror, like it was manufactured on an assembly line. No fun. Just no fun to be had here. Again, sorry if you love this movie. Great for you. I did not. So the next one, I watched a couple of lower budget movies. I did Scarefest on Lexington, Kentucky last month, and I've shot a bunch of video for it, and I will try to put something together. My editing skills are may not be up to the task, but we will see. And I talked to Hayden Newman, who's the person who was the co-director of Reunion from Hell. So I always judged lower budget movies on a little bit of a different scale, because, if you're to compare Reunion from Hell to something like, World War Z, a movie that I watched either last month or the month before, World War Z is always in focus, and there's never any problems with the audio, but also it's the most uninteresting piece of crap, honestly, that I've seen in a long time. Reunion from Hell does not have that budget, so you do have to judge it differently. And I think by that, the movie's slow. It is not a fast-paced movie, and I think that's part of the problem with it. Overall, it's shot really well. I think the acting is especially for the sort of this tier of low-budget movie, I think the acting's pretty good. I think it's interesting. I think it's just there seems to be some times where they're kind of filling time to get it to length. But overall, really not a bad movie. There's a sequel coming. I got to see, I think it was, what was it? It wasn't a trailer. I think it was just like a little section of the movie, and it looks good. And they get some, if you're a fan of horror from the 80s and early 90s, you'll probably see a couple familiar faces, and especially in the newer one, which is coming out, I think, pretty soon. Yeah, kind of an interesting little movie. The other sort of lower budget one is He Knows. It's basically a little slasher flick. This one, I think this one was a little faster paced than Reunion from Hell, although I think I probably liked Reunion from Hell a little bit better. It seemed like He Knows wasn't covering much in the way of new ground, which again, it's a lower budget movie, and they don't have to, but it's still a fun watch. I didn't dislike it. I had a good time. I think it's a pretty interesting movie. I don't have a ton more to say about it, unfortunately, but yeah, if you check it out. I think this one's available free. I can't remember where I saw it, but if you just Google around a little bit, you'll find it, and you can watch it free on, it might be Tubi or one of those new little free streaming services. So now on to the movie that I probably have the most to say about, because I thought this movie was S tier for me. If you don't know what that means, if you see like the tiered videos, there's your grades, your F, D, C, B, A. A being a very, very good movie, and then your S tier. And for me, an S tier movie has to be something that is very much breaking new ground in some way, and telling a new kind of story, or telling a story in kind of an interesting way. And The Menu for me just covered every single base perfectly. It has a fantastic cast. It is Anya Taylor-Joy, who is just a horror MVP. I think her and Samara Weaving, and there's a couple other younger actresses coming up that are just really killing it. Maybe literally. And she does a great job in it. It's got Ralph Fiennes as the chef, Nicholas Hoult playing this sort of fanboy, and just a whole bunch of other really, really neat, interesting, cool characters. It's got John Leguizamo playing this sort of washed-up action star, and he's really good in it. Everybody's really good in this movie. It's got Judith Light, of Who's the Boss fame. So this movie's it talks a lot about class. And I think I don't want to say too much about it as far as like what actually happens, because I don't need to spoil this movie, and I don't know. We might talk on the channel on it sometime, because there's a lot of interesting things going on, but I don't think you need to know that going into this movie. I think you just need to know this is a really good movie with a great cast, and it's just sort of about the upper class and how they are serviced, and the people who service them and how they service them, and sort of I think that the mixed feelings that sort of come along with that. I mean, it really. One of the things I've always said about horror movies, movies in general, is it's good to make a movie that has a message and has a point, but you have to make a good movie first. And first and foremost, this is a good horror movie. It's just a good, fun, slick, well-made horror movie. And then the things it's talking about class on top of that just are, put it a cut above everything else. Yeah, again, I don't want it to, sometimes I'll do spoilers here. I don't think I'm going to do any spoilers on this one, just because I don't think you need to. Again, they're interesting, and there's interesting things to talk about what the ending means. But I do really enjoy what the movie says about class, and what especially this sense of always needing to be on the edge of the most important thing, and having this need to be the most important thing in the room. It really, and the effect that has on people. It's a really, really great movie. This is probably going to be, not probably, this is definitely going to be on my list of best movies of the year. I don't know how high up it's going to go, but it's going to go, I think pretty high. We'll probably do something in the early part of January where I'll kind of go over my favorite horror movies of the year. I watched a ton of horror movies this year, so there's going to be a lot to talk about. No, just a really, really great movie with a lot of good things to say, and maybe some bad things to say, but in good ways. Yeah, love it. This is the one to see right now. The last one, as you probably see by this gentleman behind me, which is so Grimcutty. That's what this movie is. This movie, I think, was pretty widely hated. I was looking at the Rotten Tomatoes rating, and I think both the critics and audience scores around 25%, which I didn't really agree with that. That seems too low for me. This looks a little ridiculous. It really does. It's not particularly scary. I do think it has some interesting things talking about the way generational paranoia, and how that kind of generational paranoia affects. Each generation affects the next generation in sometimes negative ways. I think the lead actress is really good. I think it's got Shannon Sussman in it, who's kind of one of those. Shannon Sussman is one of those kind of under the radar actresses. Like almost everything you see her in she's really good. And I don't feel like she just ever got that huge, kind of breakout role where she was just able to, be a huge Hollywood star. I mean, she's worked, constantly and has been really good in everything she's been in, but I guess never got to be that, sort of A tier actress, even though I think she definitely has the acting chops to do so. So it's if you can get over some of the effects being a little maybe not quite up to snuff, and again, I think this creature could be scary if you saw it only a few times in the shadows. But the real problem here is like this scene, like you see everything, and then you see everything kind of going forward. And you really get to a point where you're just kind of like, this thing is, it wasn't that scary the first time I saw it. And now that I'm seeing it for the 25th time in full lighting, it looks even less scary, and in some cases almost looks a little laughable. So, if you get this creature, which I think is good creature work, I'm not sort of insulting the people that created the creature. I just think, put this thing in some darkness. Like, if you just see hints of this, it's really scary. But when you just put it, right there in full light, it just doesn't really quite work. That being said, I didn't hate the movie. I thought it was entertaining. And again, I think it has some interesting things to say. I'm not giving grades on all these movies, but this is like a C, maybe C plus. Again, it depends sort of on your taste and whatnot. So that's actually the only horror movies I watched this month. Again, I was slacking a little bit. But what I did want to talk about is some of the other stuff I watched. So the first thing I'll talk about, this is television shows. And there is an increasing amount of horror television coming out. And I think some of it's pretty good, and some of it's maybe not so good. And I think the list I have here is going to kind of run the gamut. So. Man, that is good. That is a good pick. I like that a lot. So anyway, the first one we have to talk about, because I watch it every year, and it disappoints me almost every year, and that is American Horror Story. We just finished season 11, NYC. Sort of have echoes of last season, where you have what I thought in season 10 was a fairly strong start. And doesn't really pay off at all. Now, I don't think this is as disastrous as last season ended. Last season was the one where it was double feature, so you had the vampires in the first 6 episodes, which that split was really strange last season. It was 6 episodes on vampires and 4 episodes on Eisenhower and aliens. I don't know what they're doing with this. Anyway, so this one, I think that you have a lot of strong acting performances. Dennis O'Hare. Brent and I did our take on the American Horror Story seasons, and I think we'll probably do another one at some point where we kind of catch up on the last few. But ultimately, the real problem is, so it's about this serial killer in the gay community in the early 1980s. I was glad they didn't include like real serial killers. I think they had some that were kind of reminiscent of real serial killers, but they didn't have actual real serial killers in the show, which is something that I kind of hate, because I don't think we should be glorifying those assholes. That being said, the show never really feels like an American Horror Story. It really feels much more like an American crime story. Again, good performances. Especially the 2 lead actors. The one it's a couple. One's the cop, and the other runs a small sort of indie newspaper, and they're both really good. Like I said, Dennis O'Hare's really good in it. Zachary Quinto's in this season, playing an absolute dirtbag of a person and doing it very, very well. So it's 10 episodes, and it's 8 pretty good episodes. And then the last 2 are just really strange. And I don't know. You sort of, I think, have to make a decision when you're doing something like this. Are you doing something that's sort of more metaphorical and allegorical and cerebral? Or are you doing something where it's like, okay, there's going to be a serial killer, and they're going to go catch the serial killer. And this season of American Horror Story was like, let's do both. And unfortunately, both doesn't really work. It just doesn't. It's kind of frustrating, because you feel like it doesn't do either one well enough. Whereas if they just focused on either, being, yes, it's the serial killer who's killing these people, and the cops are going to find him and get him. Or it's going to be this sort of allegorical story about, the AIDS epidemic. And it really just doesn't handle it very well. Ryan Murphy, I think, is good at a lot of things. Subtlety is something I don't think he's particularly good at. And so this one for me, again, 10 episodes, it's 8 good episodes. And that's about the best you can say about it. The next one, and I'm kind of doing these in order of which ones I like sort of least to most. Midnight Club is the new Mike Flanagan thingy. And it is about some kids at a hospice who are all diagnosed with terminal conditions, and they meet in the library every night at midnight to tell each other horror stories. This is a real definition of a mixed bag. I think the cast is generally pretty good. I think some of the stories they tell are quite good, but ultimately I just don't know if it really comes together. Mike Flanagan, I think, sometimes has problems coming up with good endings for his stuff. Also, the cast does not look like terminal patients. There's one actress, I think, who does a little bit, but everybody else looks very, very vibrant for being at a hospice, and it kind of feels a little. They feel almost kind of stylish, which is just weird for that setting. A big shout out to Heather Langenkamp, who's Nancy from the original Nightmare on Elm Street, plays the headmistress. There's a few little twists and turns along the way that you'll probably have figured out quite a ways before they come back. I don't know. There's good stuff there. There is some genuinely good stuff in that one, but ultimately I feel like it just kind of it didn't quite have enough steam to really pull it all the way into the station. But it's interesting, and it definitely got some good stuff. I don't think you'll regret watching that. So the next one is Wednesday, which it's been interesting seeing some of the reviews on this, and some people really didn't like this show, and I'm kind of confused by it. So one of the complaints I've heard is some people don't like the story. They think the story is kind of just not a great story. Not like it's terrible, just kind of not great. I think that's fair. I didn't love the story, but I think in this case the performances just do it. The performances bring the whole thing to life. Everybody's really good. Gwendolyn Christie is playing the headmistress of the school. Jenna Ortega, obviously, in the title role, is just fantastic. She really is Wednesday Addams. I thought Luis Guzman as Gomez Addams is kind of an inspired choice. I think he does a really, really good job with not very much. He doesn't get a ton of screen time. I think Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia Addams is good, but I almost feel like they cast her too close to Angelica Houston. And so kind of when you watch her, she just has her appearance and kind of the way she plays the character. It's sort of like she's doing Angelica Houston to some degree. And again, I don't know what Tim Burton, who made this is the first Tim Burton thing I've seen in a long time that I liked, by the way. I don't know what his direction for her was, and I don't think she's bad. I think she's pretty good in the part, but it does feel just a little too close to Angelica Houston from the 1990s Addams Family. Whereas Gomez, Luis Guzman is just a million miles away from Raul Julia. Pugsley's not got a huge part in it, but I think he's pretty good. Her roommate's very good, and then it's got a nice little part for Fred Armisen, who, if you're fans of all the stuff he does, comes in to play Uncle Fester, and I think he does a really good job. He very much is channeling sort of the original television show version of Uncle Fester, in a really cool way. Again, the main story isn't going to overwhelm you with creativity or like it's the most amazing thing in the world. But again, I think the performances here just drive it home, where you can kind of forgive some things. And I think hopefully this is going to get renewed. It seems like it's fairly popular on Netflix, so I think it's likely we'll get a second season, but who knows? But yeah, so I would recommend giving this a try. I know some people have not liked it, but what do they know? And last, the one I just watched. Now this is sort of, I don't know if this is a cheat to call this horror. It's not really horror. This is more kind of like sci-fi. And this is from the people that brought you Palm Springs, which is a movie that I like quite a bit. It sort of falls in the same category of vacation sci-fi. So it's about a couple that goes to a resort for their 10th anniversary. They clearly are having some problems, some sort of midlife crisis of a relationship kind of issues where they're kind of not into it, and maybe there's some deeper problems. Interspersed with this guy who comes to a resort with his girlfriend who's cheating on him, and a girl who comes to the resort with her father, and that's taking place 15 years ago in 2007, which, wow, 2007 was 15 years ago. That's something. It's just it's fun sci-fi, and I think it's close enough to horror that I'm just going to nudge it over. It was a lot of fun. I like the ending. I think it's one of those ones that we don't need anything more from that. Like it's a really good. I think it's 8 or 9 episodes or something like that. But it's self-contained. There's not going to be any more. At least I don't think there is. I hope there isn't. I think they really should leave it alone because it tells a story very nicely. And I think it's rare to see that, especially on television now. Everybody's trying to, get that second season, get that third season, and are not quite so concerned with just telling a good story and letting that story end where it needs to end. And The Resort did that very well. It's a good cast. It's a lot of fun. And I think given last month, I'm kind of glad I didn't have to watch 31 movies this month. But next month, in December, I'll probably watch, more horror movies because I like watching horror movies. But we'll see then. And then at the end of the year, I'll do kind of a year-end wrap-up. But I think that's all I got to say about horror right at the moment. I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and have a good drink, and have a good day. Happy birthday to you.
You told him it was my birthday?